Hello, and welcome to Pillar Talk. I am your host, Rochelle Armstrong, and during each episode, we're going to have guests from different backgrounds, different professions, and they're going to choose one of the 12 pillars in my book, Simply Complex, Leading Out of Authenticity. And they'll share how that pillar has shaped them into becoming the person they are today. So today, we have a fantastic guest, Alexis Compton. Hello, Alexis.
Hello, hello.
It is so nice to have you on the podcast today because I've never met you before. And so we kind of have a mutual friendship or a mutual, for me, family. And when she told me all about you, but not necessarily your story, I was definitely interested in having you on the podcast. So tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah. So the I was interested, out the gate as soon as I heard the title of the book, because I was like, whoa, that's me. And so, but I'm a young mother of two. I have a very, very keep me busy 4-year-old son. I have a 7-year-old daughter. I work full time. I'm in school part time, a little over part time right now this semester. I decided to be a champ and take 3 courses this semester.
Indeed.
So, so I'm simply complex.
Yes. I love it. So you have a lot going on. And I applaud you, for all that you're doing and, excuse me, just making a difference. And so what I would like to do, I don't like to wait until the end because I'll forget. If people want to contact you, how can they get in touch with you, Alexis?
So I am on Facebook as Alexis Kiana. So that's actually my middle name. So Kiana. And then on Instagram as Inky on me. So it's Inky _on me. One word.
I like it. It is so cute when I saw that, and you're adorable. So,
oh, thank you.
Yes. Now, those of you tuning in or listening to the podcast, you can't see her beautiful face, but if you log into YouTube, you will be able to see her. So, Alexis, are you ready to go ahead and get started with the interview?
I'm ready. Let's get it.
Let's do this. So, the first question is always pretty clear, cut and dry. I say it in the intro, and even before the interview, we talk about how has self-love shaped you in becoming the woman you are today, negatively and positively?
Oh man, so that was the one that I picked, and I knew it was going to be a bit of a heavy hitter, but it's definitely something still that I'm working on and working through. But the progress in itself has just been so beautiful. It's been painful, but it has been so beautiful. And I'm 28 years old now. I think that I finally it dawned on me that was something that I needed to take advantage of, right? To actually like get into is the whole self-love, because what I've been told in the recent years with having, and it seems like all my mentors came all at one time, right? So it's like, an empty vessel provides nothing, right? I can't give on to somebody else if I don't have it to give, right? So me telling somebody that I love them, or and expecting that in return, I can't provide what I don't have, right?
That's so true.
Man, and in learning that, and like I said, still walking through it now, it's been like a beautiful but painful journey, and I'm so grateful for it. Like, oh man, like when I sit and I think I'm sitting right now, actually today, it was announced that I had a promotion. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So in just, I can't, there was a point in time, even a year ago, where I never would have imagined where I'm sitting right now, right? Yeah. And I know, had it not been for self-love or pouring that self-love into myself, or actually, hitting the gas on like, this is, this feels good to love myself. We'll start to try to love myself and not depend on someone else to give me that love that I'm, that I so desperately want, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
It's been beautiful.
I love that. So let's get a little deeper into self-love and what does that look like? So, in what ways have you seen self love very healthy, very positive in your life?
Mm. I think so. My father actually raised me.
Okay.
So my mother, not to say that she was completely absent, but she, after I want to say like 9 or 10, my dad had a very real, very real time hand in raising me. I'm talking doing me and my sister's hairs, getting us back and forth to school, providing a roof over our heads, working 2 jobs, figuring out, what girls go through at the ages they
Yeah.
go through. So I think that growing up, I didn't know I didn't even, I think, gosh, it wasn't until after I had my son that self-love was something that was introduced to me, or somebody actually saying those words to me, and me
Okay.
having to dig into what that is, right?
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little more because a lot of times we use terms or we use language and it's pretty self explanatory, right? When you think
Right.
of self love, love self, but we know it goes a little deeper than that. And so, in your own words, what does self look like for you, Alexis?
Man, so for self, it's so complex.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it's a sense of peace, right? Like
Mhm.
in being okay with being confident in being in just okay, like in all senses of the word, okay, right? With
Yes.
myself, right? Like I think that as far as me, like the scars that I got, may those be physically, mentally, emotionally, being all right with them,
That's
right?
right.
And recognizing them for where they came from, recognizing what I developed out of it. Um, I think that, just me having to make a decision at one point in time, like, hey, I decided I wanted a family. And now I've done all of the things, like check all of, as far as, oh, this person is working, this person is, is in his child's life, or this person is doing all of these things, but then still something just not being content, right? In
Yes.
that, like actually whole full body self, like the way that I talk, the way that I walk, the way that I carry myself. And like I said, the ugly that comes with it sometimes, like all of that. All of
That's right.
that.
All of it. So you're only 28. So you're like a baby to me. That's so sweet. And I'm so proud of you. Again, you've accomplished so much and you continue to make a difference. And so being 28, you have some life experience. Tell us a little more about a time in your life that you felt like you didn't have that self love.
Ooh, I got plenty. I got plenty. One that comes to mind, and it's like, again, being where I'm at right here, right now in life, this present moment. Um, my daughter's 7 years old. I think at the time she may have been just a year old.
Okay.
Um, and so that would puts us 6 years ago. So I was in a very abusive relationship. And I had just got out of a relationship with her father. And so there were things, there were voids that were very, very present. And I didn't know what that was, right? I didn't know what a void was. I didn't know what, me depending on another person to make me feel good in these areas about myself. And so a lot of it was, I guess, me moving blind, right?
I like
And
that.
and I think that during that time, I'm talking physically, mentally, emotionally abusive. Yeah. And um, I just remember one time, and the irony, like history repeats itself, right?
Yes.
In some way, shape, or form, it always repeats itself. And the irony in it is one of the most scarring moments of that relationship, I happened in the city that I happened to move back to, right? And every single day when I'm on my way to work, and then in passing it, not that exact road coming home, but when I go to work, I literally come up off of that ramp and off that road for where the most, like I said, scarring, again, physically, mentally, and emotionally, incident happened, right? And I just remember how completely low I felt, but still right then and there, I didn't know what self-love was. I hadn't been introduced to it. I didn't know that it was a thing. I didn't know that, these are things that I have to heal, right?
Yes.
So I remember very, very vividly, it was 3 o'clock in the morning on 4th of July.
Okay.
And I was walking up the highway. I didn't have any shoes on. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have any money. I didn't have nothing, right? The car, matter of fact, that I was driving, this person drove off in, right? And it was at that moment, I remember having conversations with God about my daughter, right?
Wow.
And it was just like, I think that was a moment, like if I ever had to put, like pinpoint, like that was a pivotal moment in me realizing that like, I don't love me, right?
Okay.
And it took a while after that for me to acknowledge a few things, but it was at that moment where, if I had to put a pin in it, that's it.
Oh, that's very powerful. And I know our listeners can relate. Everyone has a different journey, a different story, but we can relate to your story on some level, even if it's not in that particular situation of what you went through. And so you said if you had to pinpoint it, it would be there, that you recognize that maybe you didn't have self-love. Where did the healing start, Alexis? When did you start on that journey of self-love?
So at that point, I believe that my son is 4 now, and it wasn't until like when I actually was like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. It wasn't until this last year. So this last year, 2020. So May 15th, 2020, I actually made a physical move out of the home I was living in with his dad. Now, just to be clear, it is not his dad who was doing all this crazy stuff.
Okay.
But it was, but where I had to recognize that, I love this person so much. I want so much for this person, right? Like, and we have a tendency we see potential in somebody,
yes,
but that person is not prepared for that potential you see in them, right? So it's not fair for us to put this expectation on a person, and they can't meet that what you have created, right? They may be, grow to be all of these things. They may, take over the world, right? But to set an expectation on somebody based off of your thoughts, it's not fair for them. You set a bar for them that they're not prepared to meet, right? And so I had to actually sit and acknowledge that no matter how much I love this person, no matter how much they have grown for themselves, it's not going to work, right? And so it's funny because we live like 0.3 miles from one another.
Wow.
But
okay.
But, yeah. I'm talking, I get the knock at the door every now and then.
Oh my God.
But it was just again in 2020 where I was like, I'm gonna take the leap of faith. And I for the first month or so, I slept in my living room on my couch because I couldn't be in my bed by myself. Right. Mm-hmm. And it was repetition, right? I had to get into the swing of things, and what I had to acknowledge was that like I've been doing a lot of these things on my own already. Like I've been a mother already on my own. I've been paying bills already on my own. I've been, taking the kids back and forth and doing, all of this stuff on my own, cooking and cleaning on my own. So it's not like all of this is new territory. It's more so that I have to recognize there's not another adult here with me. Share responsibility, right? Or the thought process that, hey, there's another adult here who can share these responsibilities. So it was in that moment where I was, I'm going to do it. And in being by myself, I have actually discovered I enjoy being by myself.
Well, you gotta like yourself, right? That's why you chose
Right.
self-love, Alexis, because remember, we can only talk about either where we've been delivered from, what we're healed from, or what we're actually living. And so when you told me that your topic or your pillar was going to be self-love, I was intrigued. And not just because I hadn't heard it on the podcast, but I know the power of self-love, but also the detriment of not having it. And so I want to talk
Yeah.
a little more about, let's just talk, like it's pillar talk, right? And so we can kind of process out some things. We can kind of just talk through it. What do you think goes on through a person's mind when they lose themselves either to a job, to a relationship, and they're not putting themselves first? And let me say this before we really break it down. To put yourself first is not selfish. If I take care of me and I self-care, I'm only going to be better for the people that I care about. But Alexis, I'm sure you and I both, either if it was self or we've seen other people get lost in other people or jobs, and they don't know who they are anymore. And so they go through that journey of self-discovery, but may never reach self-love. So what do you, let's just talk about it. When you were in that relationship, where my mind kind of goes with myself and with you and others, what happened to us that allowed us to either get into that situation or stay in that situation in the first place? So you can share that just based on you or just theoretically, what do you think?
Now, speaking for me and a lot of people that I have had a conversation with, again, this, not for everybody, but a lot of people I have had had conversations with around this subject. And for myself, I know that it's little pieces that get chipped away, chipped away, chipped away, chipped away, right? And so those voids I was talking about earlier, it's like we're looking for, okay, cool. So this person didn't give me X, Y, and Z, right? And you meet this other person who is giving you what the other person wasn't. So X, Y, and Z is there, right? But then they're missing JK LMNOP, right?
I'm hearing you.
And it's like, so for that, it's cool for a moment, right? Or however long this thing is being fulfilled until you realize that, oh, I could do that on my own, or I can do that on my own, right? Yes. So it's like with those, it dawns on you that this wasn't really a void, right? That someone else was responsible for filling. This was something that I can fix within. And I think that when that wears off, that's when it's like, I don't want to be in this relationship, or this relationship's not good for me because I can't get with this, or this, right? Even though they were providing me with this, and this, because I was missing it previously, that's no longer a need, right?
That's brilliantly stated, Alexis, because what I'm hearing is we're looking externally for things that can only come from within.
Yeah.
And so we set these false expectations on people or jobs. Like I feel like this can apply to any area. We can get ourselves lost in anything, like you said, trying to fill those voids. And then what happens if you stay too long? And this is why I'm so scared when you first see, I like to call them yellow flags, not even red. Caution. Like run at caution, because what happens is the longer you stay, it becomes familiar. And then you start justifying why you're staying. But part of knowing like how to love yourself is knowing your worth. But sometimes when you come, like you read my book, so, I came from a very disadvantaged background and in so many ways, just broken. And although I was trying to discover myself and become the person that I know I was created to be, along the way, people would see that and they would prey on that and they would take advantage of it. You know what I noticed, Alexis? The relationships I have today look very different from the relationships I had when I didn't have self-love.
Ooh, that one.
I believe we attract who we are. So we walk
Yes.
around here talking about, why do I attract these type of people? Well, you might
Yeah.
want to look in the mirror, because I can
Yes.
look at when I was unhealthy, and I'm still
Yeah.
becoming, so I'm not where I need to be. But when I was still trying to become this person, I was attracting either people who was going to prey on me or take advantage of me, or people who had the same insecurities. But then guess what
Yes. Yeah.
happened when I came out? So when I came
Mm,
out and I was still connected to some of those individuals who hadn't put in the work to kind of get to where they needed to get at with their own self
yeah.
love, when they saw me trying to get out, it's like crabs in that little barrel still trying to pull
Yes.
me down.
Yes.
Because it's
Yes.
said that sometimes people want you to stay stuck because they scared if you become free, you will leave them.
Yes. Yep.
But if we're all on this journey of truth and discovering ourselves and evolution, then we can do this at the same pace. It may look different, but we can go on this journey together. And
Yep.
so what I want you to talk a little more about is, because again, you're young. I'm probably twice your age. I'm loving this. Uh, because you are one of my younger guests. And so what I'm hoping is we'll be able to share this with not just younger people, but older people as well, but people in your age group who may
Yeah.
be in unhealthy relationships, who may not know their worth. So they're not loving themselves as they should, and they're putting other people and other things before them. So I know there's
Yes.
power in your story. And I
Yes.
want you to talk a little more because I talk a lot. As we talked about in the beginning, I wrote a book. I didn't told my story. Let's talk about Alexis's story. And so, if you could identify in your upbringing or your childhood one or two things that you feel like may have chipped away at your
Mm,
self-love, what would that one or two things be?
mm. So I recognize and having to identify things so that we can heal them or, work with them or, grow them. I've identified, things and I've gone to counseling. I've had to go to counseling. And honestly, had my hand not been forced to go to counseling, I probably would not have gone. Right.
I hear
And
you.
there was a question that was asked at one point in time was, when did I first feel betrayal?
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought of, like, you think about friends, you think about, relationships where somebody's cheated or mistreated you, or, where you've told somebody a secret and then they go and tell everybody. But I think that my very first feeling of betrayal was actually with my mother. And um, so because I recognize that I am I always want people to be happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I used to struggle a lot with, like, if my significant other or somebody that I care about is not happy, it's my fault, right? If they've had a rough day or they've had, they're down and out and I can be the one to make them happy again, then I'm failing, right? So the first time I remember that happening was, again, with my mom. My mother and my father were in this nasty custody battle. And I just remember, first and foremost, myself and my little sister had to go be on a stand, right? And they called both of us, but I think my sister may have been too young. So I was the only one to go up and speak. And I remember being cross-examined by both their attorneys. And there were very specific things that were asked. And when I walked out of the courtroom, and oh man, that was all day long, even as a child, right? Like, you think that time is just like, oh my gosh, this is never going to be over. But I remember us going in the beginning of the day and then coming in and the sun was already down.
Yes,
And
I've been there.
yeah, and when court dismissed, my mother came out, and because she was who we came in with, given the joint custody and how they were doing 1 week here, 1 week there, um, I thought, and my sister thought, we were going home with her. So when we go to run to give her hugs, and we were pushed away, physically pushed away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think it was at that point that I first felt the betrayal, but then also too, that was the first chip at my self-love, because I've done something wrong when my mom is not happy with me, and she doesn't, not, I don't think that I thought at the time she doesn't love me, but I thought she was so upset with me that she didn't want me anymore, right?
So let me ask you this. That is such a touching story. And to that degree, I can't relate. I can relate to the court being on the stand and the exhaustion of the day. But to be clear, when you were pushed away, was it your mom who pushed you away, literally, or was it someone in the court system saying, no, you can't go with her?
No, it was pissed. So I remember trying to give my mother a hug, and she physically pushed me away, and she told me, you wanted to go with your dad, go be with your dad. And that was how we departed. And I just remember, like, it used to be, me and my sister used to love going to when it was the week to go to my dad's house. Oh my gosh, we were so excited to go, but the love a child has for her mother, the love a child has for the father, right? Especially whatever the relationship is, it's still one and it's still a bond, right? And so not understanding and being so hurt and confused. And yes, I was, you would think, because I'm so excited to go be at daddy's house on the weekends or on his weeks, that I would have been happy to go with him. But I was so confused for days. I think it was like a few weeks that my dad was trying to bring me up out of this sad, right? And his thing was always like, just whatever the girls wanted to do, just do it. Like, and especially at that time, because he just wanted us to be happy too, right? And him not knowing how to heal what was broken, because his mother raised him and his three brothers, right? Okay. So he didn't have a father figure, but he didn't know how to fix that. And so for him, it was just like, all he knows is fix. And that was something he couldn't fix. And I just remember sitting there with popsicles for days, because that was what he thought was going to make us happy.
Oh, wow.
But I think that was my first understanding, or if I, again, had to pick a point in time where I had to identify where the first chip at self-love was it, because I feel like I can't make this very significant person happy, and it's my fault.
Okay. And how old were you?
Oh Lord, I think I was 9 or 10 years old, I believe. Yeah.
That probably felt pretty traumatizing. I think we underestimate trauma.
Yeah. And I have a coach who actually, what's ironic is, a lot of the figures that are that have made a huge difference in my life happen to be male.
Okay.
I remember when I was going through a workforce development program, it was at one point in time I was having like a breakdown. First of all, I don't even know where it came from, let alone that I was capable of having one. And he told me, because of that abusive relationship that I was in, right, that there were certain, I was having flashbacks. And I didn't think that was acting, that was only in movies. Okay. But he told me, like, do you understand that, like, you don't have to go to war to suffer from PTSD?
So true.
And yeah, it was at that point in time that I was like, oh, I gotta go talk to somebody.
Yes.
So,
yes. Yeah. So, just out of curiosity and concern, were you and your mom able to reconcile after that?
So after that, I believe my mother had, like, she was to visit us like every, like, a day out the week. It was a Wednesday actually out the week, and those came few and then far between, and then they just never came anymore. As I got older, because when I turned 18, she actually moved to the Yucatan jungle, right? Because she had a fiance who lived there, and they had a son, so my brother. And that's where they raised him for the first few years of his life. And then she just moved back to Southern Virginia not too long ago. But I mean, we still communicate. It's never really been a conversation surrounding healing. Okay. But I definitely recognize in a lot of the things that I'm walking through and going through that, and not to put a negative on it, but that my mother has a lot of healing to go through.
Sure.
And it's a matter of identifying that I need in admitting that I need healing, right?
Yes.
Because it's a lot of blaming of other people or other circumstances or this and this and this and this is at fault. And I just remember the point in time where I had to recognize, like, yo, the places that I'm in, the situations that I put myself in, I have put myself there, right? I made this decision, and you know, this is a circumstance because of that decision, right? Yeah. And when I finally stopped blaming outside sources and really started looking within, I became a lot more happy.
Yes.
And it's
you know, it's so true.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, finish your thought. Go right ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, you know, and I had a conversation yesterday, ironically enough, there's no age on learning to love yourself. There's no age on it, right?
Well, as you're talking, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and it's absolutely true, because people in different, you know, ages, people from different walks of life, everything. We go through so many different things, and we don't always acknowledge it right it's not like a trigger that goes off, right? Where it's like, well, I think I want to self-love today. Like, it doesn't work.
And what do you think about it, Alexis, that just like confidence, just like self-esteem, do you think it comes and go? Like, do you think that once you have self-love, it's just a constant? Or do you think circumstances can change it? Can situations that you go through change it? What are your thoughts about that?
So as far as like the confidence or, you know, lack thereof, I think that comes with different territories, right? Like different things that I want to try out. Or I'm gonna go conquer the world today, right? Like depending on what piece of the world you're gonna conquer, you're gonna trip and fall every now and then, right? But you gotta want to get up, dust yourself off, and go do your thing, right? So I think as far as the self-love, I think that's more of an awareness, right? So there's been plenty of times where I'll be like, oh, okay, you know, because I love this person, I'm going to bend over backwards and then flip, right? Because I love this person, I'm going to do it. And I have to take a hard pause, and it's just like, I've found peace and it feels good. This self-love thing is awesome, and I'm not going to take myself without it, right? So I think that because it's a learning curve, and it's a hard learning curve, that, you know, every now and then it's easy to go back to what was comfortable or what we know. But it's something that I feel like you never really stop learning, right? Because like I said, I do it all the time, even with my kids. Sometimes I had to have a conversation with these kids this morning. I said, nope, we're not gonna stress mommy out, and that's just gonna be that. We're gonna put our shoes on and we're gonna get out the door. If you don't get your shoes on, then, you know, we'll just walk with them in our hands. But mommy's getting out this
Good for you, Alexis.
So it's like, definitely also too, boundaries, right? I've learned to set boundaries, because that was a thing for me. Like, everything was so fluid. I didn't have hard boundaries for anybody. And, you know, was it last week? I think I set a boundary with a person, maybe a week before that, maybe half a week before that. And just because this person felt otherwise, they decided to do what they wanted to do. And that's great, right? I love you no less, but I set this boundary. Now I know my place with you. You know your place with me. I love you. Have a good evening. And then that's how we kept it pushing. They're like, oh, for real? You just, yes, absolutely. Because we had the conversation. You understood. You know, we were here, right? And you made an active decision. And this is a result of that, right? And so just making sure that I set those, I'm actually following through with those boundaries that I set, right, across the board. And like I said, I definitely had that conversation, probably far beyond what my children could comprehend, but I let them know a boundary is a boundary is a boundary. I don't care who you are. And, you know, and that's how we started our day, right? Because I'm teaching them too. And it's like, they always say that actions speak louder than words. So I'm trying to what I didn't get to see, I want them to see. And you know, me going through the process, it's not always pretty, but I sit and I really have conversations with my kids about, you know, I know that was ugly, but this, and this, or, you know, this, that, and the third, or this could have been handled this way, right?
Yes.
Even with their actions or, you know, what have you. But it's something that I'm trying to teach because I wasn't taught that until, like I said, I'm in my 20s, right?
And you're doing phenomenal. Knocking it out, Alexis.
Thank you.
You know, but also when you're
you.
talking about the babies, and I love how you said that boundaries are for everyone. I don't care who you are, even with your kids. Did you say they're 7 and 4? So
Yes,
what I'm interested in is act, like you said it, like we show people love in action. Tell me a little more specifically, how are you raising your children to have self-love? Because you may not necessarily say the words or say it. So just kind of give us an example of what do you do, Alexis, to show them babies how to love themselves?
So my fabulous daughter, I'm telling you, I go through so many daggone laundry detergent pods. It's unreal because kid, it's a fashion show all of the time. I'm talking, I just washed and went through 3 days of laundry, washing and folding and putting the clothes up in the room. And then in 2 days flat, I got the whole thing right back here in the laundry room. And I said, ma'am, what's going on? Well, we were playing fashion show. And so, and you know, and her having conversations with people at school, Mom, we have to pick out a fabulous outfit because I told someone I wanted to be a fashion.
Sweet.
Okay. So I have, you know, because I remember growing up, granted, fashion was never really my thing. I was played in the dirt. I always, you know, played football with my dad, the kids on my dad's football team. Like I did all of that stuff, right? Never in a controlled area, but you know, but I was always the one that was being rough. So with that, I had told my daughter too, like, look, Mommy don't do purses. Mommy wears backpacks. Mommy doesn't, you know, do the heels all the time. I got to prepare. And, you know, I throw somebody, it makes somebody's head explode. Lex is wearing a dress. But, you know, I encourage that in her, right? Because just because it's not my cup of tea doesn't mean that I'm going to discourage it in you. Because like I said, growing up, my mother wanted, I guess, this to the T, like doll baby thing, and I wasn't it. I'm talking, I was in, you know, middle school, and she would, you know, oh, here's these heels. Granted, they're only this tall, right? But sending me to school and stuff like what she's seen on TV, and oh, that was cute. I want you to do it. You know what I mean? Not pressing or shoving my views or who I am onto her, right? Still, they're having structure, right? But allowing her to be who she is, right? Mom, do you think it looks good? Baby, do you think it looks good? Okay, great. I have turned into that mom, like, oh, that's what you want to wear outside? Long as we're appropriate, I'm good with it, right? I may think it's the craziest thing. These colors don't match. This is driving me crazy. My OCD is making my eye twitch. You know what I mean? But whatever floats your boat, I'm happy with. And as far as my son, like, we just signed him up for baseball, right?
Okay.
And I don't anyone in my family at all, maybe my dad, but I don't think at all anyone played baseball, right? Nobody on his dad's side played baseball, to be completely fair. As athletically as he is built, he is not athletically anything. So it's like, you know, the hand-eye coordination is off. But my son wanted to play baseball, so we signed him up for baseball, and it's just, he's completely excited about it. This is what he wants to do, so this is what we're gonna do. And you know, and so he hasn't very much gone into, oh, I want to do this and I want to do this and I want to do that. But whenever they do, I try to encourage it very much and let them know it doesn't matter what the next person thinks or says. It doesn't matter if your friend Sally Mae or whatever is or is not doing it. If you want to do it, that's what it's going to be, right? And with my daughter, we are in an area where majority of the kids do not look like her, right? So they are completely fascinated with a child with braids.
Okay.
And Yes.
I can
So
imagine. Yes, I hear what you're saying. Yes.
So I braided her hair, what is it, on this past Sunday, and she's come home almost every day to tell me that somebody is touching her hair or this kid is playing with her beads and so on, so on, so on. So, and me trying to, because I'm just like, somebody do what? But I'm gonna take a step back and acknowledge that this is how children learn, right?
Sure, that's
They,
right.
they touch and they ask questions and they, all of those things. So me trying to understand that, but then also letting her know if you ask somebody not to touch your hair and then they touch your hair anyway, they're crossing a boundary and that's a violation, right? Because that would be the same, no different if someone was to inappropriately touch you, right? Because if you said no, then that's what a line is drawn. A no is a no is a no. So, making sure that she understands that early, because I think the way that I was taught was way more rough than that. But,
Okay.
and letting her understand and know, like, it's a boundary. With my son, his thing is, oh, I want my sister to play with me. And she wants to chill and watch a TV, right? Like, that's cool every now and then, if it's a decision we are making together that we want to play together, okay, cool. But if she has decided she wants to do this thing, you decided you wanted to do that thing, everybody is not going to do what you want to do. One, two, you can't make somebody do something just because you want them to do something. It don't work that way, right? And
Good,
so,
good teaching.
yeah, and teaching my son no is no too. So that one's been fun because he's 4 and everything should not be no for him.
I know, right? So when I think about self-love, what I've heard from you today is self-love is self-expression. So when you were talking
Yes.
about your kids and I asked you about self-love and how do you teach that without necessarily just saying this is self-love, self-expression. However they want to show up, let them show up. Don't try to change them. But boundaries are important. And those
Yes.
boundaries are in place to protect you, to protect other people. And once they understand those boundaries, you can have healthy relationships, right?
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and so I guess one of my last questions for you, and I say I guess, because you may say something that sparks another question, is you touched on this earlier, and most guests do, but one of my closing questions I like to ask of everyone is what made you pick the pillar self love to tell your story?
Mm. So I self love. I feel like that just when I saw it, even in the very beginning of the book, I was like, yes. So I think that because it's been such a major thing, and especially because it's so present right now
Yeah.
uh, in my life, that it was, I want to have as many discussions about self-love as I can have. And that really is what it is. I'm having conversations with friends of mine,
Nice.
sometimes multiple times a day, but I appreciate that, one of my friends in particular, like, this is something that she really wants and she wants it bad, right? And I have to tell her, like, because the things people post on Instagram, the things people post on Facebook, you coming over to my house and I might have it clean that day only because I knew you were coming,
Right.
right? So it looked like 2 Tasmanian devils ran through my house, right? It might look good, right? But it's, sometimes it's ugly, sometimes it's painful. And like, I'm here to let you know that just because someone says, oh, I've conquered self-love, like, that doesn't mean that they're not still working through things.
That's right.
That doesn't mean that, that it was an easy feat by any means. So I think that one, because I know that that's something that I wanted so bad and that I'm still working so hard for, that, like, that one, I was like, that one right there, that one.
Stated. And again, I am just so honored to have you on the podcast. And I just appreciate you sharing your story, just your honesty and your candor. And I hope that those of you who are listening in, that you were able to really gain insight and just draw from Alexis's story. And I know in the beginning, she did give how to reach her. But again, Alexis, give them your social media handles. If someone wants to contact Alexis for more questions or you have thoughtful feedback, how do they contact you, Alexis?
So it is on Facebook. It's Alexis Kiana. It's Kiana. and on Instagram as Inky on me. So Inky_on me is one word.
Nice. Do you have any closing remarks or closing comments before we wrap up?
Oh man, I have been excited to have this conversation. I've been excited to read the book. I remember I hit a certain point. I was like, I was late out the door getting to work, and I had got up early too. And I was like, oh no, I can't. So I myself am honored that I was invited to have the conversation. I enjoy having these conversations because in having them, I notice more and more things. It's built another connection too, and I'm grateful
Absolutely.
for it. I'm grateful.
Yes. Well, Alexis, keep leading out of authenticity. Listeners, please review and rate our podcast. And you have it. Authentic people, real stories. Rochelle Armstrong, leading authentically.